This is SOSF. You ever think about how weird humans are? Biologically, I mean, we're the outliers. Most animals have this thing called estrus. They go into heat. We don't. And I just read this breakdown of what the world would look like if we did. And man, it is a trip. I was reading this wild multidisciplinary report, a thought experiment put together by a bunch of academics, and it just blew my mind. The whole thing is based on one simple, terrifying premise. What if humans didn't lose their estrus cycle? You might be thinking, dude, what the hell is an estrus cycle? And that's the whole point. You don't know what it is because you, as a human, don't have one. We're the weirdos in the mammal world. Almost every other mammal, from a deer in the forest to your dog at home, operates on this cycle. You know it as being in heat. It's a period of time, totally controlled by hormones, where the female is fertile and, more importantly, is biologically compelled to mate. It's not a choice. It's a full-blown neuroendocrine event. The paper I was reading used the word totalizing, and that's the perfect way to describe it. It takes over everything, behavior, thinking, the whole damn show. The original Greek word for it, oistros, literally means frenzy or sting, like a gadfly driving cattle insane. That tells you everything you need to know. During estrus, the female brain is flooded with a tidal wave of estrogen. This isn't just a little mood swing, it's a biological command. Her body sends out these massive, unmistakable signals to every male within sniffing distance. We're talking potent smells called pheromones, specific calls, even physical changes. It's a giant, blinking, cosmic neon sign that says, I'm ovulating right now. Let's do this. And the males, their brains are wired to respond to that signal with just as much frenzy. It's a perfect system for one thing and one thing only, making sure babies get made at the exact right time. But somewhere along the line, our human ancestors took a hard left turn off that biological highway. We evolved what's called concealed ovulation. The neon sign went dark. Nobody knows for sure when a human female is ovulating. Hell, for most of history, women themselves didn't know. And along with that, we developed continuous sexual receptivity, which is a fancy way of saying humans can and do have sex at any time, whether they're fertile or not. This wasn't some minor tweak. According to this report, it was the cornerstone of everything we call human society. Think about it. Why did we develop things like long-term pair bonding, marriage, the nuclear family? The leading theory, the one most experts land on, is the paternal investment hypothesis. Human babies are born completely helpless. They've got these massive brains that need years and years of care and feeding. That's a huge energy investment. If you're a male in a species with estrus, you show up for the party when the neon sign is flashing. You mate with as many females as you can, and then you're gone. You have no idea which kids are yours, and there's no incentive to stick around and find out. But with concealed ovulation, now you've got a real puzzle. If you're an early human male and you want to make sure your genes get passed on, you can't just show up for a week and leave. You have to stick around. You have to guard your partner from other males. You have to have sex with her repeatedly over time to increase your chances that you're the father. And this, right here, is the evolutionary glue that created the pair bond. The female, in a way, traded the frenzy of estrus for a dedicated partner who would help her raise that big-brained, helpless baby. It was a trade of mating efficiency for long-term security and high paternal investment. That one biological shift created the concept of fatherhood. So, the thought experiment in this paper is, what if we reversed it? What if, starting tomorrow, every human on Earth was put on a fixed, 1-month-long annual estrus cycle? A single mating moon, as the paper calls it. For 1 month a year, every woman goes into this biological frenzy. For the other 11 months, basically nothing. What kind of world does that create? Well, it's not the world you know. It's something straight out of a sci-fi novel, and the scientists who wrote this paper broke it down piece by piece. First, let's talk about what that 1 month would actually feel like for the individual. This wouldn't just be a heightened libido. The report draws on everything we know about how extreme hormonal shifts affect the human brain. Think severe PMDD, postpartum depression, perimenopause, but amplify it by 1,000 and synchronize it across half the planet. The massive, sustained surge of estrogen and other hormones would wreak havoc on higher-order thinking. We're talking about a complete breakdown of what psychologists call executive functions. Your ability to concentrate? Gone. You'd have the attention span of a gnat. Your memory would be shot. People would be forgetful, unable to recall basic information, a state of perpetual brain fog. Complex problem-solving, critical thinking, nuanced decision-making, all of it would be basically impossible. And that's just the cognitive side. Emotionally, it would be a nightmare. Imagine extreme, unpredictable mood swings, where you're flying high 1 minute and crashing the next. Heightened irritability, aggression, pervasive anxiety, maybe even panic attacks. The paper points to studies showing that estrus in rodents correlates with heightened fear responses, so you can add a layer of paranoia and defensiveness to the mix. For 1 month, every year, a massive portion of the population would be plunged into a state where rational thought is hijacked by hormonal imperatives and emotional chaos is the norm. Now, scale that up to 8 billion people. What happens to society when, for one predictable month every year, half the population is in this state, and the other half is biologically wired to react to it with equal intensity? The first thing that collapses is the very foundation of our social structure: paternity. In a world with a month-long, society-wide, hormonally mandated orgy, the concept of who the father is becomes completely and utterly unknowable. It's not just uncertain, it's a biological and social impossibility. And when you lose paternity, the entire system of patrilineal descent, where we trace our family name, our inheritance, our identity through our father's line, becomes meaningless. It can't function. The whole logic is gone. So, society has to reorganize around the only biological certainty that's left: the relationship between a mother and her child. This, the report argues, would almost certainly lead to the universal adoption of matrilineal systems. Your identity, your clan, your inheritance, it all comes from your mother's side. Your family isn't mom, dad, and the kids. Your core family unit is your mother, your grandmother, your mother's siblings, and the children of your mother's sisters. This becomes the fundamental social and economic building block of society. But that creates a new problem. You've lost the biological father as a figure of investment and authority. Who fills that role? The paper points to a fascinating anthropological concept: the avunculate. The primary male authority figure in a child's life becomes the mother's brother, the uncle, avunculus in Latin. Think about it. It's genius. He's a member of your own matrilineage. His genetic relationship to you is certain and quantifiable. He has a direct genetic stake in your survival. So, in this world, it's your uncle who teaches you how to hunt, who disciplines you, who invests in your future. The social role of father is completely decoupled from the act of mating. Human mating itself would be forced into what the paper calls a biphasic structure. You'd have two completely separate markets. For 1 month a year, the estrus month, you're in the mating market. The goal is short-term and purely genetic. The report, drawing on evolutionary psychology, predicts that mate choice would narrow down to the most basic cues of genetic quality. Men would be drawn to youth and physical signs of fertility in women. Women would be drawn to men who exhibit markers of good genes, physical symmetry, strength, social dominance. The complex calculus of long-term compatibility, kindness, reliability, biologically and psychologically irrelevant during that month. But for the other 11 months, you're in the parenting and partnership market. Sexual desire would be minimal or non-existent because the hormonal drivers are gone. The focus of social life would shift entirely to forming stable, cooperative alliances for raising the children that were conceived during the frenzy. When you're choosing a long-term partner in this 11-month period, you're looking for completely different things: resourcefulness, a good work ethic, a nurturing personality. It would be a formal, accepted separation. You have your mating partners from the festival, and you have your parenting partner who you build a life with. The two might have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Even with the uncle stepping in, societies would still need to find clever ways to encourage broader male investment. The paper explores some incredible cultural solutions that actually exist in small pockets of our own world. One is polyandry, where one woman marries multiple men. Fraternal polyandry, where a set of brothers marries a single wife, would be incredibly adaptive. It keeps the family land and resources from being split up and binds a group of related men into a cooperative unit dedicated to providing for one woman and all her children. But the most mind-bending solution is a cultural belief known as partible paternity. This is a real concept, documented by anthropologists in lowland South America. It's the belief that a fetus isn't made from a single act of conception but is built up over time by the accumulation of semen from multiple men. In this worldview, a child can and should have multiple biological fathers. Now, we know this is biologically false, but as a social technology, it is absolutely brilliant. It transforms what we would see as paternity confusion into a system for securing investment. Every man a woman slept with during the estrus month is now a recognized secondary father, socially obligated to provide gifts, food, and protection to her and the child. And the ethnographers who studied these real-world societies found that it works. Children with multiple recognized fathers had significantly higher survival rates because they benefited from a wider network of support. In our hypothetical estrus world, this belief would likely become a foundational cultural truth, the ideological software that keeps the whole system running. So you have a society built on female kinship lines, where uncles are the new fathers, and children have a whole team of dads. But what about the rhythm of life itself? The report argues that the year would be split into two fundamentally different states of being, a concept the sociologist Emile Durkheim called the sacred and the profane. The 11 non-estrus months are the profane time. This is the realm of the everyday. It's the time for work, for order, for rationality, for building things, for raising children. It's predictable and stable. The 1 estrus month is the sacred time. This is a period of chaos, transcendence, and creation. It's when the normal rules of society are suspended. It would be marked by massive, society-wide festivals, a kind of biologically mandated combination of carnival and Burning Man. There would be music, ecstatic dance, feasting, a necessary cultural container for channeling the overwhelming biological drive gripping the population. These festivals wouldn't just be a party. They'd be the absolute sacred center of the culture, the moment the society renews itself. Durkheim also talked about collective effervescence, that heightened state of shared emotional energy you feel at a massive concert or a protest, where the individual gets swept up in the feeling of the group. Now imagine that feeling, but it's not just psychological, it's hormonal. The entire population, synchronized in this shared psychobiological state. The report says it would create an emotional electricity of unparalleled intensity, forging a sense of social cohesion and group identity far more powerful than anything we can imagine. The individual consciousness would be almost completely subsumed by the collective. Of course, for any of this to work, the entire machinery of the state and the economy would have to be radically redesigned to accommodate what the paper calls the Great Annual Pause. Think about it. For 1 month, a huge portion of the workforce is cognitively impaired and behaviorally unstable. So, most of the economy would have to shut down. Industries that require complex thought, finance, science, law, engineering, would just close. You'd have an 11-month production year. All financial forecasting, all labor contracts, would be based on this reality. Your salary would be for 11 months of work, with a mandatory, unpaid biological leave. But while Wall Street is dark, a whole other set of estrus industries would boom. Hospitality, food and beverage, security, sanitation, large-scale entertainment. A massive temporary labor market would emerge to staff these festival zones. Healthcare systems would have to be prepared for the predictable annual surge in trauma cases, STIs, and, 9 months later, a perfectly synchronized wave of births. The biggest challenge for the government would be keeping the lights on. The power grid, water systems, communication networks, the food supply chain. How do you maintain critical infrastructure when most of the workforce is gone? The report posits the emergence of a fascinating social class, a guardian class. This would be a group of people who, for whatever reason, don't participate in estrus. Maybe they're post-reproductive elders, or people who are infertile, or maybe they've chosen to undergo hormonal suppression. This class would be responsible for running the skeleton of society during the shutdown. They would hold immense de facto power, creating a new and fundamental form of social stratification. The legal system would also need a dual framework. The principles of contract, consent, and criminal intent are all based on the idea of a rational, consistent person. That idea goes out the window for 1 month a year. So, you'd likely have one set of laws for the 11 profane months, and a different set of rules for the sacred month. Contracts signed during estrus might be voidable. The standard for criminal responsibility might be lowered, recognizing the state of diminished capacity. This brings us to the deepest, most philosophical questions. What does this do to our understanding of gender, power, and the self? The report lays out two plausible, and completely opposite, scenarios for how gender and power could shake out. The first is a matriarchy of the cycle. In this model, power follows biology. Since women are the gatekeepers of reproduction and the only certain link in kinship, all social and political power flows through the female line. The estrus month is a time of absolute female choice. The rest of the year is governed by stable, female-headed clans. Men's status is defined by their relationship to that matrilineage, as a brother, a son, a partner. But you could also get the exact opposite, a patriarchy of control. This would be a system built as a male reaction against the biological power of women. The estrus month would be framed by male-dominated institutions as a dangerous, chaotic, polluting time that must be controlled. It could lead to the seclusion of women during estrus, elaborate and oppressive purification rituals, and severe restrictions on their autonomy. The unknowability of paternity, instead of empowering women, would fuel a collective male anxiety that manifests as a drive for total social domination. The tension between these two possibilities, female power from biology versus male power from social control, would be the central conflict of this society's history. And what about you? The individual. Your identity. We in our world base our sense of self on a narrative of continuity. We believe we're more or less the same person from one day to the next. How could you maintain that belief when your personality, your motivations, your very consciousness, undergoes a radical and predictable transformation every single year. The paper suggests you develop a cyclical self. You wouldn't see your estrus self and your non-estrus self as a true self and a false self. You'd have to learn to integrate them as two authentic and necessary poles of a complete existence. Your personal story would be about this annual journey from the rational, social, productive you to the primal, instinctual, creative you, and back again. Failure to integrate these two selves could lead to a kind of psychological splintering, a dissociative disorder. And this leads to the ultimate endgame. A society this advanced would inevitably develop the technology to control this cycle. Science would push for hormonal suppressants, genetic therapies, a way to eliminate estrus and its massive social and economic costs. And that would create the ultimate ethical crisis. Would you take the pill? Would you opt out of your biological nature to gain the stability of a 12-month existence? To be able to hold a steady job? To have a linear sense of self? Is that an act of liberation? Or is it an act of self-mutilation? A rejection of the sacred, biological rhythm that has defined your species for all of time? It could create a new, profound class divide. A stable elite who can afford to buy their way out of their biology, and a cyclical mass of humanity still bound to the ancient calendar of the flesh. This whole thought experiment just hammers home how contingent our reality is. We take things like marriage, fatherhood, and our stable sense of identity for granted, as if they're the default settings for humanity. But this paper makes a powerful case that all of it, the good and the bad, is built on a single, pivotal evolutionary fluke, the loss of estrus. A different roll of the biological dice, and the entire human story would be something we would barely recognize. It's a powerful reminder that the world we've built is not an inevitability, but a fragile and specific adaptation to our own unique, and very strange, way of being. It makes you wonder. So, let me leave you with this. What if this version of humanity was the one that achieved space travel first? They send a ship to a new planet, and first contact happens during their 11 months of calm, rational behavior. The aliens think they've met a species of peaceful scientists. Then the next ship arrives, and it lands during the mating moon. What do the aliens do? Do they think they're being invaded by a completely different, monstrous race? Think about that for a while. See you next time.